my Palo Alto Networks firewall administration and management concepts. We're going to go over some of these things that we need to get started with pulling stuff out of a box, putting it together, getting kind of working in the network. What do we need to think about in order to get stuff up and running? All right. So we got all sorts of fun things going on as far as getting into administer and manage my different Palo boxes. Okay, so I mean, that's kind of the important stuff. We should know about the basics. I mean, we're going to talk about the CLI and the GUI access. Honestly, that should not surprise you guys, but I actually want to add one in here. There's also API capabilities. So we can go in and really have things magically administered, if you will, but remotely administered through a RESTful API. So kind of cool things. But we also get into our concept of role-based management. And this is very important, especially if you're a service provider, because you can carve things out into multiple boxes. And we do call that a virtual system or a vSys. But my whole idea in here is that I can get into role-based concepts. There are 6 of them that are built in. We'll talk about them here in just a second. But everything that I have, I can assign to exactly where they're going to be. And really, I guess with that in mind, we'll kind of get down to both device and vSys levels. Okay, so that's where I can kind of think about what rights do I have, what role am I going to serve, what am I doing in each of the locations or in which particular location we happen to be talking about. We'll also look at some of the configuration management options that we have, so different things that we're able to be doing in here to help our administration along the way, and a little bit about the PAN-OS stuff. A couple little miscellaneous bits and pieces in here for what we have. So basic access wise, we have CLI, which by the way is required for initial setup. Okay, so initial, we'll just say init, is CLI is a must. And then once I set my IP address, because there is no default IP address on here, so once I set my IP address, then I can go back, make sure it's an I, not a T, but then I can go back into my GUI and get through the rest of the config. Or I could do everything via CLI. I mean, may make my life a little bit more difficult to do it because it is really a good GUI for administration, and believe me, coming from me, that means an awful lot because I despise most GUI administration for just about any device whatsoever. So the fact that I actually kind of like the Palo Alto one, it really kind of goes pretty far, at least if you know me and my opinions on that. So anyway, that's where we have to get to. You do have to do at least some of the CLI information in here. Otherwise, we do have a REST, what we call a REST API. Which, just in case you care, stands for Representational State Transfer. So the RE is kind of representational on there, then state transfer. But anyway, so we have the API capability as well that we can go ahead and allow management that way. All the things that we have, and we'll get into in our configuration nugget, we'll get actually into the box, set it up for its initial IP, so do some couple CLI things, and then demonstrate what the GUI happens to look like, so go through all the tabs and everything like that in there. Conceptually, though, it is going to be important for us to look at the device tab, okay, particularly when it comes to software and licenses. Okay, so that's where all the important things, I guess, are going to take place, because my box can do all sorts of different things in there. Some features will need to have licenses for it in order to keep going, in order to keep getting software updates. So not just my base level software, but my dynamic updates, as you will. When I go through and kind of take a look at the different pieces that I have, so under my updates, I have antivirus. What else do I have? I have my applications, so my app stuff, different IPS things, if you will, and URL. Okay, those are different updates that I'll get. These two are weekly, and URL is daily that it updates. Okay, basically there's a whole lot of stuff that goes on the internet, so they kind of keep track of those things and can update that stuff if you have the licenses for it, or the subscriptions for it anyway. Then we can go ahead and do that. Different subscriptions, by the way. Let me spell this. and S. Let's see, what are they going to be? They're going to be the threat prevention database, URL filtering, the what we call a global protect, and then wildfire. So, and we will spend time with each of these in different nuggets later on within this course. So I do just kind of want to set that up a little bit here as far as knowing that I have to have licenses for them, but we'll get into what they do and how to configure them and the specifics of each one, because especially when you look at it, this is my basic IPS and threat prevention, this is basic URL right here, but Global Protect and Wildfire are a bit more advanced and actually quite cool, but we'll get into those details as far as what they are a little bit later on. Now, once I'm looking at everything in here, so like I said, just from an administration standpoint, a basic admin standpoint, I set my CLI, I get into my web-based stuff, take a look at my basic setup, if you will, update software if I have to do that, change whatever version I'm going to have, and then I'm really ready to get into configuration. When I start out, by the way, admin is the username, and admin is also the password. So admin is going to kind of get me going for things on here. So that's where I'll start at in order to get in and begin to set things up, begin to get stuff going, really going to lead me into my role-based administration. Okay? Because that's the next thing that I'll be thinking about in terms of what does this all mean to me and what am I going to do with it. So let me go ahead and clear this off right here. Alright, and now we'll get into what that role-based administration happens to mean to me. Okay? So my account administration, if you will, everything I'm going to get into, I do have 6 built-in accounts. So I have a super user, I have a super user read-only, what else do I have? I have a device admin, let's put quotes for it, so same thing, device admin, read only, then I have a vSys admin, and a vSys admin read only. Okay, those are the 6 roles that I have available to me. Okay, and really I need to start kind of thinking of everything at which level I'm going to administer stuff. Okay, because that's going to be my differences as far as what we have. Now, thinking through this, okay, like I said, we were going to have to look at stuff from a device standpoint and from a vSys standpoint. But then I got this thing called super user. So if I have a device admin who has to administer the entire device, which by the way includes virtual systems, then what's the difference between a device admin and a super user? Well, very simple. The device admin does not have the ability to set up rights. It does not have the ability to modify my account functions or create accounts on there. So basically, I can do everything with the device from a network point of view, from a policy point of view, a operational point of view, but not from the management or the administration side. Okay, that has to come from a super user account to be able to see and do everything. Read only, of course, means that I can just look at it. I can't actually change stuff. So that's going to be my difference on here. Both of these are, or all 4 of these, I guess we should say, are device oriented. So I'll just say dev right here, where these 2 are vSys. So each virtual system will have a virtual system administrator. It only has the ability of looking at that particular virtual system. So any of the interfaces associated with that, any of the policies associated with it, anything that we have just at that level. So this is going to kind of give me the idea of how we're splitting things up and what my different roles happen to be. The names are virtually irrelevant. Like I said, the beginning one that we have is the admin. Okay, and that's going to be my only built-in account to begin with. So that's where things happen to lie as far as what I'm able to do. We have predefined ones, otherwise whatever user-defined roles that you want to set up, anything that you want to do for your own version, perfectly cool to do. So I have that ability to set up my own rules, name them, whatever makes sense to me. I can kind of go with that, or I can use the things in here. Once I get into setting up my own rules, we'll look at this in configuration portion, but there's a lot of details as far as being able to checkbox what I can do and what I can't do. So you can get very granular. Okay? So we'll just say that RBA is granular in terms of being able to set up those roles. Kind of remember that as far as any test questions that you might get on there. Do also have to figure out or have to remember what my 6 built-in roles happen to be. That's going to be important for us in there. But built-in roles versus the user-defined roles, that's going to be good to go as far as what we need to look at in there. All right, now configuration management, really the next area where I want to kind of look a little bit and just explain how configurations work on in PanOS or on Palo Alto here. Okay? Well, it's kind of funny looking at this because some of the courses that I just got through creating were on Juniper Networks. And one of the things I love about Juniper Networks is that you can make changes and kind of play around with your config, and it doesn't immediately take effect. You have to make a conscious decision to do something by committing your changes. Palo Alto is exactly the same way. Now, granted, there's probably some amusement in there because the people who started Palo Alto actually spun out of the NetScreen and Juniper groups. So maybe that's where they got the idea from and how it came, but whatever. Yeah, history is what it is. The fact is that when you start things out, or whenever you make any changes or playing around in the GUI, you are creating or working with a candidate config. Okay, so basically anything that you do is not immediately taking place. If you're not used to this, like depending on what vendor you are playing around with, sometimes you do something, you touch it, you click it, and poof, it's magically working right away, which, by the way, can drive you insane sometimes. But beyond that, if you're used to that level of thinking, it may get a bit tedious when you first start out that you're sitting there changing things and going, why is it not working? I just made my policy do this. Why can I still go out? Or why can't I go out? Or, whatever the details happen to be. You must commit your configuration. Okay, that's going to make it take place. And there's going to be a little button up at the top right-hand corner of your GUI on pretty much any page that you're on, or just type the word commit if you're in the CLI portion. But that kind of gets you an idea that you can do things. You can do a granular commit, like object by object. That's kind of a new feature, by the way, something that Juniper by itself did not have. So we'll look at it and say that this is a possibility for granular commit. And that'll give you some checkboxes as far as the areas to go ahead and commit and or not commit at that part. This is good if you have a multi-stage deployment, if you've got some really complicated things that you're doing or virtual systems that you're playing with or stuff like that, or if you have multi-user or multi-administrators, multiple administrators going at the same time. Generally not a good idea from a logic point of view, but sometimes we just find ourselves in that situation. So you can do a granular commit, and that way, you and Bob, okay, you and Bob are working at the same time, and this way, when you click the commit button, it doesn't automatically do whatever he's doing and possibly screw things up or give you both an error going, oh, this is not complete, and you're looking at it going, I don't know what that is, I didn't touch that. Okay? So granular commit gives me some idea that I can kind of get in there and only commit the stuff that I've been changing or that I've been working on. That, by the way, also does kind of pull into account that everybody should have their own username for doing the administrative changes. Please do not let everybody use admin. Bad things will occur, and you have no accountability in your logging either. Everything that you do, by the way, on the administrative side of things is logged in both the system log and in the configuration log. So again, specific usernames, each one individualized, make everybody's life all that much easier in there. One of the other cool things that we can do is I can create transaction locks. And I can do this for both the configuration or the commit portion. So any particular thing in config I don't want anybody else touching, I'll go ahead and do a transaction lock, which will lock that part of the config. Or the commit itself, if I kind of want to go out there and say, I don't care what level you are, or worst case, we are using the same user account, don't commit, I'm going to put a lock on it. Okay, so even if you can sit there clicking it repeatedly, because of course pushing it more than once makes it happen faster, just like elevator buttons, then it really won't take any effect on there. Everybody has the ability of looking at transaction locks, being able to see them, to see who's got them or anything else like that, but you have to be able to both add or remove. I can do it in the GUI, I can also do it in the CLI. So CLI command, change my color here, if I did a request, what I meant, just a request commit lock, add. Okay, or request config lock add, and remove if I want to take it out. So put a pipe, remove. And again, CLI is kind of easy to find in there, but or the GUI is very easy to find, but the CLI, we can go ahead and type that in for it. So that kind of gives you an idea of what it is that we're going to have. There is a configuration management section of the GUI as well, and we'll have all sorts of capabilities in there. So we'll just call it config management. And I can save, I can export, I can load, and I can import. Okay, so all sorts of different things. Now you kind of look at this from a naming perspective or a word perspective, and you look at it and go, okay, well, what's the difference between save and export? Well, quite easily, save is going to be on the local device, so on the firewall itself. Export would be like to your computer, okay, or to an FTP server or something else along those lines. Same thing with load versus import. Load is off of the local system, so on a local directory of that particular firewall. Import is bringing it in from someplace else, like the local workstation, like an FTP server. So that kind of gives the idea of where we're at and what we can do. So we can kind of bring these things in here, we can merge them, we can load them in there as far as overriding stuff, do all sorts of different things. One of the other cool parts, especially when I look at my save function, so saving different versions of the config locally on there, is that I can also do what we call a config audit. So this would be on the device tab of my GUI. And if you're familiar with Unix, it's just like doing a diff. It's seeing what specifically is different between the two configuration files. It tells me everything that I've got, pluses, minuses, see exactly what I have in there and what's going to be going on to really give me some great starting points of knowing what has changed since whatever day everything is working fine. Whatever your baseline happens to be. Always, 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 always. When you get things working correctly, save a baseline. Okay? You might want to save it off someplace else too, just in case the box completely blows up. But saving your baseline, having that information out there, gives me the ability to go back and compare, to go back and look at things, to go back and see, okay, so before, I had this and everything was working, now I just add 2 users and something's not working, and that makes no sense because adding a user shouldn't affect that policy over there. And it kind of gives you the ability of looking back and you can go, oh, no, well, more things have changed because here's the other stuff, and there's where my error happens to be. So it just gives you good ways of kind of going back and taking a look at stuff based on past performance or past known good configurations in there. So that's going to be a very powerful tool as far as where we're at. Kind of thinking about it, I think it's best to kind of scratch this off of here. We'll do this in the next section when we actually get onto the box. So stay tuned for the next nugget where we get to start playing with it for real and see how all of these actually take effect and really do our initial configuration on a PA200 for us. Okay, so I know we did kind of cut things short a little bit on there as far as, taking the Pan OS off anyway. But our big things were we discussed stuff about my methods of access. So I have my CLI, I have a pretty damn cool GUI, and I have the REST API that I have management access to. And really, the couple things that we got into were my my RBA, my role-based administration, and of course leading to config management. So all the little pieces that we have, and really just all those things to make our life easier as we go through and administer the box. This was just a tease, it's just the starting point. I understand, and kind of we're raring to go. So let's start thinking about the details of what we're going to want to do, what roles we're going to want to use, how we're going to get from here into here, and playing around and actually doing the administration on there, because that's the part we're going to think about and we're going to start to see in the next nugget. I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.